Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I think first and foremost is probably the best option is to see if I can answer any questions that you might have had from that little fast jaunt through accessibility with Microsoft Word, and see if there's anything I can answer in that regard. Anything? Questions?
There was a question, Penny, in the chat
Um,
that Ebony responded to. She had asked, is there a screen reader that reads more naturally?
um,
And Ebony put a response, but I thought maybe you'd like to
Yeah,
respond.
there are some other tools that are, well, if you look at JAWS, that's one of the most, foremost and one of the most expensive assistive technologies out there. And the last I heard, because we do have copies of that program in our office for testing, they were looking at providing more natural voices. The algorithm for that, I guess, is very complex, but there are other tools that will read a screen that does have more natural voices. And I think Ebony posted one there too that I hadn't heard of. So I'm going to go check that one out, because I get that a lot. It's like, well, this doesn't sound like, a human. And yes, they're getting there, but it's not there yet. And the other one is NVDA. That one to me has a more natural sounding voice, but it's still not there. You can tell that it is, computer generated. Eventually, I think we'll get to the point where some of these voices will be much more natural. It's very difficult to program in cadence and inflection and that kind of thing, depending on the context of a sentence. So I think we'll be there shortly. But for now, I do have to say, most of the time, the blind individuals that I've ever worked with that use JAWS, they don't care what it sounds like, because they listen to these pieces of text at something like 800 to 1,000 words a minute, and they get it. They can hear it. They can process it. And I'm just like blown away. And I'm like, I can't, how do they do that? So many times we make some assumptions, and I was one of them as a teacher, because I had someone who came into my classroom and I was teaching Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel, etc. And she was completely blind. She had a note taker. And I was so worried, because I talk really fast. And when I'm teaching, I can talk even faster. Some of you may relate to that. And I thought, oh boy, I don't know how to do this. And so the first day I'm like, I tried to change everything that I did. I spoke at about 1/3 the speed. Okay, everyone, let's go up to the ribbon and we'll find the insert tab. I mean, that's the way I was talking. At the break, this was at about 45 minutes or an hour, the note taker came up to me and she said, you really don't have to do that. She goes, this will be excruciating if you just stop. Okay. And so she was she was very gentle. Don't get me wrong. So I said, okay, well, will you tell me if, she gets behind? And we, as an accommodation, we installed JAWS for her. And after the break, I just started teaching like I normally did. And that woman was very close to me. I mean, I could see her screen. I could watch what she was doing. She didn't miss a beat. She didn't miss a single instruction. She was there and she finished. She got certified. I was just like amazed. So again, some of those assumptions we have to put aside. And I know I did, but there are great tools out there, and there's ways that we as teachers can provide those accommodations without it impacting us severely. So Susan, did you have a question? I kind of saw a hand wave. I wasn't sure if that was a question.
No, that was just me agreeing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Story.
Yeah. It's like, we kind of all go through it.
In the chat earlier, people had asked about accessibility tools for Google Docs. I have recommended in the past is Text Help. Have you worked with them, Penny?
I have my, well, okay, I got to qualify this, because I'm fortunate in my office. I have a team that works on accessibility for websites, our website, as well as some others that we manage. And I'm constantly finding these things and I'm sending them on to our team, because they use a lot of analytical software to determine how well something meets WCAG 2. We're at 2.1 AA. Now, when you go and explore WCAG, just try not to worry about that. But there are different versions of, these different rules, and they're constantly changing them. And so we always have to meet that standard. And many times those tools are still behind. They're at 2.0, or they're only single A, they're not double A. And soon we're told we may even be going to triple A, which is going to be a very tough situation for a lot of agencies. So
Penny, I'm going
yeah,
to say that you are brilliant in this space, and you're like AAA and AA and
I'm
triple T.
sorry.
And
Yeah,
I'm not sure what that means
no,
exactly. If you could just take a moment to clarify.
yes, and thank you for doing that. If you can think about, it's kind of like standards, or maybe a decent analogy might be kind of different models of cars. You kind of have your Toyota Corolla. It'll get you around. It'll do what you need to do, but you need to, step it up a bit. You need to have more bells and whistles. You need to have more safety equipment. So this organization, WCAG, I always call them WCAG, and there is this, I can't even remember the full acronym to say it, but they are the ones that try to set worldwide standards of how people with disabilities can interact with digital resources. And they progress over time as technology changes with these different levels. So level A is, your lowest model, so to speak. It provides very minimal requirements for accessibility. When you start getting up to double A, and then soon, like I said, triple A, it's like going from bronze to silver to gold, or silver to gold to platinum. It is just how they define how individuals with disabilities can interact with digital materials. And as we move so much more into this we're always online, we're always interacting in this digital space, that's really where those standards come from. So I hope that helps, Jamie, kind of saying how those are different. And organizations, depending on how they view themselves, they may have to adhere to different requirements. For example, OTAN receives federal monies through the We Owe a Title II grant. Therefore, all of our digital materials are required by federal law to meet WCAG 2.1 AA. If I am an organization in California, and maybe I'm a business, okay? Businesses have a tougher time with this, and that's why lawyers make lots of money for finding out, websites that aren't accessible. They may or may not meet any requirement under WCAG, and then they're exposed potentially to lawsuits. State-funded organizations have a different standard. And last time I checked, it was WCAG 2.0 AA. So they were just a little bit kind of the previous certifications. So each organization can be defined how they provide that type of access, perhaps based solely on their funding source. Ours is a requirement because we receive federal money. Others may not have that same thing. Yeah.
That is very helpful. And then Rachel added a comment in the chat. Thank you, Rachel.
Yep.
I want to open it up for a moment to make sure we get to some questions that you all may have. Or not. There's no pressure. Jose, you unmuted. Did you have a question?
No, everything is great. I liked everything you were presenting. I don't know if you have a faster way, but I put it on the comment here. There's a feature in Google Slides where they could type into the speaker notes through voice. I don't know, is there something that that could help with typing for someone that like has a injury or
Yes, Jose, there's lots of tools. Word has a dictate option where students can dictate their work instead of typing. I know that in a previous life, I used to be a transcriber, and I found it much easier for me to listen to what I was transcribing and speak it, and then it was transcribed, so I didn't have to type with my fingers. So these things have been around, but they're not always brought to the forefront because we don't need them because we learned how to type and or not, you know, and so yes, most of the word processing tools have some form of speech to text, and they also have text to speech. So if someone like myself, if I have a big long document, maybe I don't want to read it, but I could potentially turn on text to speech and then listen to it. An immersive reader in Microsoft is really great for that. And it allows learners, especially English language learners, to be able to go through and listen to the text. And it even breaks it out by grammar, which I personally need. Is that a noun or is that an adjective, right? It'll break all of that stuff down. So there's the Microsoft right now, I keep harping on it. It's just put itself forward for accessibility. I'm really hoping that Google will get on that bandwagon a lot faster. We do have Google certified trainers and experts within our office, and we are constantly haranguing them to please get with it and make sure, because this is a tool that's used across education. You promote it across education. It should be more accessible. So, Rachel, I see your hand up. Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you.
Oh, no, it's okay. You can ignore me.
Oh.
I was wondering, you know, I hear you on the Microsoft versus Google. Microsoft is more advanced. Some of us are restricted to Google use. So I was wondering if you could either tell us like, what is Google missing? Or maybe even like, what are some of the things that we can transfer from your suggestions with Microsoft Word and PowerPoint that you do know that Google has?
The last, and I apologize because I'm not the Google queen. I have people in my office that are do that much more than I do. Let me go ahead and bring up Google Docs. I know some of the primary areas that are difficult in Google are and this isn't always a good thing. So teachers have to be aware of using styles to help learners get through and navigate. It doesn't mean that they can't get through it with the screen reader, but styles just help. And it does have styles in terms of title and subtitle and heading 1, 2, and 3. That's great. It will allow somebody to get through those tools. The other one is
Penny, could you show it? Did you say you were going to bring it up? I think a visual would be great.
Yeah, here we go. Let me go over here, and I don't think I need sound, but I'll turn it on just in case. See my Google Doc here?
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm like, you know, introduction, most of the time what people will do, okay, they'll just type introduction and then they'll go over here and they'll highlight it and they'll make it bigger text and they'll make it a different color or something like that, right? Well, that's okay, but if I come up here and I choose a heading, then that defines this space and allows for people to navigate through it. And it's the same thing in Microsoft Word. Okay, if I was going to insert, say, an image, maybe we can go and find one. Let's search the web and see if we can find something on a polar bear. When I bring in an image as a polar bear here and insert it, so I just selected it and I click insert. So now I have an image of a polar bear. And what I don't know is whether or not this particular image gave me alt text. Now, oftentimes in Microsoft Word tries to be smart and says, oh, I'll provide you an alt text. And sometimes it is so wrong. It doesn't have anything to do with what's in the picture. So that's when we have to help our teachers understand and provide alt text. And a lot of times that's a matter of a right click, or you can look at different adjustments here and see. They've moved it since the last time, because I've always used this little, we call it a skinny snowman, these little 3 little dots, where I can actually go in and choose alt text. But now I just did a right click and then I can add alt text. It doesn't give me anything. If a teacher misses this step, then they're going to get that screen reader where it says graphic. And that's not always what you want to be conveyed, especially if the image is supposed to be a part of your instruction. This is something that's very difficult sometimes for teachers, is they want to make it pretty. They are very visually oriented. So if it doesn't look good, then it's not going to do what they want it to do. But I'm one of those, it's like, if your content if your image doesn't lend itself to the teaching, why are you putting it in there? So that's kind of my perspective. So here I could add my information, and I typically in Microsoft Word, I don't ever worry about titles. I would put in here, maybe if I had the name, which I don't, of this image, I could put that here, and then I could put in a description of what this bear was doing, right? Polar bear walking across the ice. And when I click OK, now theoretically, when somebody comes to this image in a screen reader, they would hear that descriptor. Okay. Sorry, Rachel.
Yeah, I want to jump in right here because it's about alt text. So I was doing an image yesterday that had text and images, and I was like, I don't know how. Do I write out all of the text that's in the image and maybe skip like describing the icon? Or so what's your advice for that?
Well, in Google, it doesn't give you very many options. In Microsoft Word, it does. So I'm going to bring up a document here. Hopefully, can you see that? Let me pull it up here. So in Microsoft Word, if I were, sorry, I just used Latinized text. I don't know if you guys ever use that, but if I want to put in a picture, and I'm going to go find, and I'll go find a polar bear again. If it has text on the image, Rachel, you need to be able to provide a descriptor, what's on that, especially if it's embedded into the image and not a text box over the top of it, because the way most of our programs work is that as you put things on a page, it's on a different layer. You've seen that where you can move an image forward or back. So your text box on top of your text, the way the screen reader reads it, it would see perhaps, and it just depends on what program you're in, the image first, and then it would see the text on top, and then it might see the icon on top of that. It just depends on how that image was created.
Yeah, so in this case, it's like a single file. So I'm imagining if I had it in there with no alt text, it would just say graphic on it.
Yes.
You know, it's like it's all together.
Yes.
Yeah, so we write out the text that's on it, maybe say image with text that says, I don't know.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That, I mean, just try to think of it in a way that what is the image trying to convey, and is that text important to that goal? And so then that's when I would get to the point of going, image of a polar bear with a speech bubble that says, "Brr, it's cold out here," right? So it allows a person who cannot visually see this to understand, there is an image of this bear and they're supposedly talking, right? So that really does help someone who's using a screen reader to understand the content that you're providing. Now, in Microsoft Word, when I go to insert this image, and this is going to be ginormous, but we'll go ahead and make it a little smaller. When I look at this and I'm going, well, okay, I have an image. I can do the same thing in doing a right click, or I can go to my picture toolbar up there at the top, and I can look at my alt text. Now, this particular one, Word did not generate a description. Normally it does. They keep changing this. So if I choose generate a description for me, who knows what I'll get? A polar bear walking on the snow. Well, that's not too bad. It did a pretty good job. And you could leave that, but it's also going to say description automatically generated, with low confidence. Well, I don't want to say I have low
leaving
confidence.
That in there would be a big mistake.
Yeah, I'm like, what? No. So, these are tools that, Microsoft is really nice about, trying to be helpful. If you don't check that, you may be saying something you really don't want to say, right? The second one that Google does not do is, as I have not found it yet, and Rachel, you may know where it is mark as decorative. This is what I would use for icons, for image logos, things that really aren't lending itself to the instruction, but you want them because you want to be able to say, this is our logo of our company, etc. And this allows then the screen reader to basically just skip right over that image. Doesn't even really acknowledge that there's an image there. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. It's just, again, of trying to ensure that you're conveying the information when someone has a visual impairment, that they can actually get that content out of this document. Yep. Yeah. And
Really,
Oh, go ahead, Rachel. Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say that's really interesting. I don't think Google has that decorative checkbox.
I don't think they have a checkbox. And the last time I looked around for them, even trying to, see some, they have their alignment down here, and this is adjustments, but that's adjustments in the color.
Right.
So when I do the right click, I don't see anything that allows me to say that I want the screen reader to skip over it. I mean, I look at size and rotation. It's not here, and it's not a huge thing, but that then means in Google, you need to be really on top of it, that all of your images are properly alt texted.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Maureen, I think you had unmuted earlier. I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to ask a question if you had one.
Sure. Thank you. Penny, I'm wondering, say I have somebody with a learning disability who's studying for the GED, right? And we have a graphic like they have in the science section of it that may have multiple things going on in a graph. How does that play on something like this?
The graphics and also, tables
Right.
are really tough. And generally what ends up happening to make this work, Maureen, this is what I found. Tables, for example, they need to be reconfigured in a way that allows the screen reader to read the header column with the text in the cell. And that means instead of having the columns with the headers at the top, you basically have your rows that are then identifying the information within each cell. And you'd have to see an example, and I have some that I'll I'll find them and post them in the chat. But those types of data sets can be really difficult. And sometimes it means you really have to step back completely and provide a written description that's complete about what is on that infographic. I love infographics. They're great, but they really can limit folks of being able to understand what they're conveying. And can you do it in a way, I mean, if you have an 8x11 infographic that's just chock-a-block full of text and imagery that all convey meaning, that may be really hard to make fully accessible unless you're willing to step back. And this is adding to a teacher's workload, right? How do they provide this? First and foremost, I would check with the publisher to see if they provide an alternative delivery for that item, because they should. And that may be a written description of that infographic that you provide to that learner. Then they can read that infographic or use a screen reader. This is helpful for students who just aren't visually oriented. That can be very helpful, even if they just can't interpret what this chart is supposed to be telling me. It gets very tricky. Like, we all love like Excel, and we love our pie charts and our graphic charts. In order to make that work for anybody who's using a screen reader, you've got to provide the data set underneath it. And I run into this a lot with teachers. I'm like, oh my gosh, that takes up so much room. I have this whole, series of rows and columns. That's the data that generated this bar chart. Well, that's the only way a screen reader would be able to really convey to someone, what did all of those colored bars really mean? So it isn't a quick fix, Maureen. I think that's what I'm really trying to get at. And I would truly go to the curriculum provider first and say, hey gang, I got people that need some accommodations, and these infographics aren't doing it for me. What are you providing to help my learners understand what that infographic is conveying? And sometimes they'll go, oh, oops, just a minute. And I'll have to go and actually create it for you. But that's why ensuring that your providers are adhering to those accessibility rules is important as well.
Penny, I'd like to give you an opportunity to find that example, because we only have 2 minutes.
Okay, hold on.
And I'll let you find that first. And then Jose's hand is raised.
on,
I want to get to
hold
that
on,
question
hold on.
after she finds the example.
Yeah, hold on just a second. I had a whole bunch of these. Okay, hold on. Let me give you this one. Here's one. It's another one of those screen reader demos. And let me find the other one. This one I'm going to give you, this guy's really good. He's blind. He's blind, and he's showing how he uses a screen reader and why things go wonky. So he's from UCSF. Sorry, University of California, San Francisco. And so both of these kind of walk you through how people use screen readers, and then how they, when people don't
So I've got
properly,
my essay written,
whoops, sorry,
and I've been working on it.
sorry, how they can then provide guidance to help teachers understand
about a
why
week.
it's
So now I'm going to show you how
I don't want you to show me, just hold on here. So those two at least, and then the one that was embedded in the presentation. Each one has little nuances of differences, but even if you do a Google search or a search in YouTube, show me demonstrations of how screen readers work, you can see a lot of different options. And oftentimes it's just a matter of spending a little time on, okay, what does this really look like? Because if we don't experience that disability, we have no reason on this planet to go out there and check it out, right?
Yeah.
It only happens when it comes to our fore, right?
So it's already 2:30. Can you believe it? So Jose, I know you had a question.
Yeah.
Do you want to throw it in the chat? Or maybe it was just a comment. Penny, really grateful for your expertise. This is definitely an area that, and I've told you this already, that I really need to improve in. And so this is the beginning of a journey of learning. And thank you for those of you who are here, who are showing interest in this. It is a part of equity. And if we can do this, it not only benefits those who need it, but those who don't need it,
Yeah.
but like it. So thank you, Penny.
Absolutely.
We're going to close this breakout session. Stay tuned for more information. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday.
All right. Thank you all. And I'm trying to find the stop share button. Here we go.
Thank you so much, Penny.
You're very welcome. And if you didn't get it, you can always email me. I'll pop it in the chat again. Happy to share resources, etc.
You're a master. How many hours to?
If anybody wants
minutes?
a longer session, I go through Microsoft Word and Microsoft PowerPoint, and I can do it online and show you how to use it, how to correct things. Just let me know. I'm happy to put it. If you can bring together a group of teachers, I'm happy to do it.
I was
I'm
just
very
going to ask
passionate.
if we wanted to book you to do a virtual training for teachers in our state, is that something that can be arranged?
Susan, my philosophy is, if you don't ask, the answer is no. So I'm like, ask, because I'll just have to clear it through my director. That's about it. And ask. We'll make it work.
Because yeah, I am one of the people in charge of doing technology sort of
Yeah.
training, professional development scheduling here in Minnesota, and I think
Yeah.
it'd be a super relevant and very helpful topic for the folks that I work with. And you obviously have a depth of knowledge that I simply cannot provide.
Well,
love to have you.
I would be happy to share. I'm passionate about this, not only for all kinds of reasons. So I would be happy to share and learn from others.